Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here. Thank you, Carolina. I have the feeling that this is a really exciting time for the university. I've spoken to a few of you, and I've learned that you have just moved into this building, that you're now opening very soon a new doctoral program. So it seems to be everything seems to be at the brink of something exciting, new is happening, along with what you already have. And now hearing about this European project, I'm really very, very much impressed. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much. You have already learned about me. Oops, sorry, this is too far already. Here. You have already learned about me. I started, and this might be really interesting also for the students, I started as a performer. Actually, I'm a violinist. I was educated as a classical violinist. I studied in Germany. I studied at the Moscow Tchaikovsky Conservatory, and then I went to England, and then I had a career as a violinist, and I had my own ensemble. I specialized in contemporary music. I was very much a chamber musician. I loved that, and then I moved countries. I went to the Netherlands, and there I started a solo career, and so performing was really at the heart of what I was doing. But then there came this time, and I'm just telling this because I think when art and research meet, something really exciting can happen. And at least in the German-speaking countries where I come from, art and academic research was for too long separated, and I think we really have to merge together and develop something together, and so that the practice can inform academia and academia can inform practice. So while I was still really working, and I loved giving concerts. I'm this kind of concert beast, you can say. It's something I love doing, and but I missed a little bit intellectual challenges. So there was this point where I thought, okay, my intellectual challenge is a little bit reduced to thinking of a new program for the next music promoter, and I want to have more than that. And as much as I love the playing, I would like to have something for my brain. So my partner at that time started a doctoral, and we were in. I'm really telling you this anecdote now. I'm doing a detour, but we were giving a workshop in England, and we were just in conversation with a musicologist there, and I was just out of the door, and when I came back, Marco told me, my partner, I will start a doctorate. He's a composer. And I envied it so much, and I thought I really had this kind of food envy where you think, okay, I want to have that too. So I asked, is it possible as a performer that I can do a doctorate too? And my soon-to-be supervisor, Bob Gilmore, said, yeah, of course, why not? Here in England, we're doing this kind of practice-based, practice-led research. And so 6 weeks later, we were enrolled in a program at Brunel University in London. I see now that was very quick, and that we were very, very fortunate that was possible. And I started a completely new journey in my life, really, and I really I was really going deep into a topic. I thought at that time that the creative potential of a performer is very much underestimated. And so what I was researching at that time was, what is my part, what is my share in the creative process when I'm working together, when I'm collaborating with composers, and then also when I'm collaborating with promoters, because this is also some kind of negotiation which is going on. What is coming into, who is their audience? What am I offering them? How do I shape a concert? What is the program? What will it look like on stage? So it was really from the very beginning when I conceptualized the program, then I talked to or collaborated with the composers, then I was on stage, and the way how I presented that, what is it that makes a concert or a work so that there is a charismatic relation to the audience? This was actually my topic at my PhD, and I had the chance to work on that for 4.5 years, I think. So I got really deeply into this matter, and I had my intellectual challenge. I learned a lot, and I learned that as performers, we have a lot of experience which we can draw on, but it is also good that in academia you create yourself a system, and you're really not only following your belly feeling, but you think, I really want to know it, and you really try to you combine theory with practice and to really understand what you're doing here. So I learned a lot about collaboration, and that was at a time where nothing was there yet. Now it's pretty much researched, but at that time nothing was there yet. I learned about concert aura. I learned how to ask good questions to meet my audience, so that I know about their values and that I can offer something, but that I can also break a tiny little bit the expectations and create something new and create charisma. What I didn't do at that time is I looked at charisma from different points, from stage setting, from programming, from the branding, and so on and so on. But I omitted the body. And almost everybody thinks charisma has got something to do with the body, how we stand on stage, how we play our instrument. But that was too complex for me at that time as a doctoral student. I needed to mature in my research. I needed to know more about how this can be done, how this can be approached. And there we are now. Okay, now this is this one. Embodying expression, gender, and charisma, breaking boundaries of classical instrumental performance practice. Quite a few years later, I got awarded this project by the Austrian Science Fund, and now I have 3.5 years to really go deep into that. Okay. Actually, I don't have yes, I have the time here. So, what do we do in this project? In this project, my team and I explore the importance of a performer's body as a determinant of musical expression, of gender, and charisma in Western classical instrumental concert practice. So I'm really reducing this because, of course, in pop music or in Eastern concert practice, or what in different cultures, in different genres, you might have a different practice and way of how the body moves. So it's Western classical instrumental concert practice. What we do is we explore the routines, the norms, and the values that not only surround but also are also established by a performer's practice. And we want to know how the body of a performer is an essential part of the artistic, social, and aesthetic situation on stage. The project has started only on 15th of August this year, and so it hasn't been running for a long time. And you might think there can't be any results yet, but we have pursued a pilot project over the last 12 months, and this is what I would like to talk about today. So let's get into it and start with the body of a performer. Here at this picture you see me performing a piece by Luisa Guir, Tokaichi Ochoshi, for singing violinist, and maybe you can already read something from this picture about the expression a body can have. So the body is the medium through which instrumentalists realize sound, realize musical ideas, and realize emotion. And their body simultaneously, that's what I think, it is the emotion, and it is the conveyor of sound and musical idea. So performers use, consciously or unconsciously, gestures, facial expressions, and the staging of the body as a means of expression, communication, and interaction with the audience. And through their corporality, through the way how they use their body, they allow the audience insight into the individual, but also into their staged. We have to think of branding into the stage, especially if you look at pop music, for example. There it is really very obvious that the body is staged. And you can also, through their corporality, performers allow the audience also insight in their culturally shaped personalities. So in our project, we understand a performer's embodiment as a technique and also as a habit which has been inscribed in their body through training. We all know, we know what it takes to play like the musicians here. Through training, years of practice, but also cultural association, lived routines, how do you get on stage, conventions and values of their discipline. And last but not least, it's also shaped by their individual personality. So emotions and thought processes are somehow produced and presented through gestures, and they will become part of the charisma that is constructed together with the audience. The audience members perceive the performer's intentions and feelings from their posture, movements, facial expressions and gestures and actions, and they reflect these in their own physical and emotional reactions. This is something which has really scientifically been proven. And in doing so, their perception, the audience's perceptions are influenced by their tacit body knowledge. We know something about how is it to stay here on stage. For example, we know everybody who has been a speaker at a big conference or who has been on a concert podium knows something about nerves, knows something about this special kind of concentration, knows something about the relation to an audience. So this is some kind of, and we know that in our body, so this is some kind of tacit body knowledge. And of course, we also follow a certain value system which we bring to the concert situation. So what is it that we ask in this project? We ask, what constitutes expression, gender and charisma in a performer's bodily work? And how is the body of a performer an essential part of it? How do a performer's bodily routines on stage establish norms, values, and social relations? And what are an audience's expectations of values and charisma within a particular discourse? To explain that, for example, when I lived in Holland, I played concert at squatted houses, where everything was like beton and not nice concert chairs, nothing. And I would never go there in a long concert dress. I would go there really, totally casually. But when I played at Concertgebouw in Amsterdam, of course that was something totally different with chandeliers like here. And this concert hall is built for royalty. And an audience expects something else from me, to dress differently and to present a different concert program. So these are values which are also collected around a venue, you could say. And this is something an audience expects something from you when they enter a concert venue or a concert series. Okay, we also ask, how does gender play a role in the performance embodiment and the audience's perception of the interpretation of your musical work? Do we listen differently to a female performer than to a male performer? Do we expect a different way of playing from them? I don't have any answers on that yet. So we wonder, we think, how can this be expressed as a third step and deconstructed in newly created artwork? So I'm not only doing this basic research, but I also think, how can I express this in an artwork? And you will have the chance to have a first look at an audio visual installation where I try to incorporate some of my findings later in the, I don't know the name of the hall, it's you will find it in the concert program, in the program of the symposium. And we want to know how, if I'm performing on stage and if I know about these if I know more about these values and the way how my body works, and if I can use this knowledge for my presentation on stage, how does this then affect my charismatic relation with the audience? These are questions we ask in this project. So you will wonder, who is we? So this is me as head of the project, is the one who conceived it. And this is Kai Dinkel. He is a postdoc, and he comes from a different angle. He comes from sociology of practice. We really want to combine different disciplines because we think that we can learn from each other. And I know I have worked before with Kai, and sometimes we really disagree on things, and then we have to work that out, and then we have to see, okay, he probably has part of the truth. I have probably part of the truth. And let's see, if we understand our perspectives, can we find something new which neither of us has thought of before? So this is really interesting. And at the moment, we just have an application running for the third position. That's a junior researcher. We want to have an instrumentalist, a young instrumentalist. We want to have another generation, so I'm the oldest. And then Kai Ginkel is in the middle, and then we really want somebody in his or her 30s, so that I don't miss, as a performer, I don't miss the new things. What's going on in the new generation? Do they have a different way of playing? Do they have a different conception of what a concert should look like? And we will know in January who will fill this position. It's very exciting at the moment. So maybe, and this is maybe something, because you are thinking here of introducing artistic research or artistic scholarly research in this university. For me, it is very often an interdisciplinary project. We have an interdisciplinary. I think this works really well for artistic research, and because the idea of embedding research in an interdisciplinary approach is to provide a point of reference and accountability which is different from a single discipline. And the typical first-person perspective, which we have in artistic research, which we necessarily have in artistic research, will then be supported by a second and a third-person research perspective. And this will help to counterbalance possible subjectivity, and will also reduce this kind of defensiveness we sometimes feel when we are doing research at home. Because as artistic researchers, we are still part of our practice. We are still in our profession. And we are creating somehow, we are investigating. We are not looking on a practice, but we are doing this practice. So this is one of the huge steps which an artistic researcher has to do, somehow find the option to create some distance from what they are doing, although they are in the middle of that. And being in an interdisciplinary project helps a lot, because then you always have this kind of sounding board, and you always have some kind of critical feedback from the outside and a different perspective. Okay. So we have 3 approaches for data production and methodology. In the center of this investigation stands the process of doing art and the actual art production. And this is typical for artistic research. This is how we produce the material and data, and how we follow the artistic processes that we will then explore. And we identify 3 steps in that. First of all, artistic research, which is based on practice. And in this project, this means we reenact interpretations of selected performances by different soloists to explore the meaning of their body or the meaning of the body of classical instrumentalists, and to recognize how musical expression manifests in and through the body. I will talk more about that because I have developed a method for that. And then we combine artistic research and sociology of practice. Here we reflect on what kind of gender expectations an audience assigns to a concert setting, and how performers answer to it via their non-verbal bodily expression, and again how this relates to the construction of charisma between audience and performer. Then we have the third approach, which is artistic research through creation. The plan is to create several multimedia artworks, and among them a full-length multimedia artwork that on the topic he, she, they, where we try to construct or deconstruct our 3 topics expression, gender, and charisma manifested in the body. We have twice a year work labs with other artists and scholars who come from related disciplines, and they will complement the team's ongoing work, but they will also challenge the team's ongoing work. Okay. I would like to have a look with you on approach number 1, the practice-based method reenacting embodiment. And that is a method we apply, which I designed and which is really central to the project. And it's about slipping into the experience of another body and consciously compare it with my own or one's own corporality, and then in a third step to reflect on it systematically. It's not, reenactment here is not about recreating any historical situation. This is sometimes done in historical historical interpretation research, for example, or it's also it's done in dance productions where they try to reenact old choreographies. It's not like that. It is really basic research and how the body works for expression. And it includes 6 steps in a full cycle. First one is you have to select a solo work, which is documented on YouTube, but it has to be an audiovisual documentation, and it should be documented by 2 soloists, 1 female and 1 male, because we are looking into this gender thing. And then once you have found a work which you also want to practice yourself and where you have these 2 different interpretations, then first of all you develop a documentation of your own personal interpretation. So this is really the first step. So you know what you would like to do with it, and you document it in a audiovisual video. You just have a video. And then the next step is that you reenact the performance by these 2 soloists, and you're listening to the interpretation, and you try to follow their tempo, you try to follow their colors, you try to follow the crescendo, decrescendo, and so on and so on. But you don't look so much at the body yet. It's first really about how do they do that, how do they interpret, where do they take their liberties. How can I reenact that with my own body knowledge? What is it? How does my body function if I try to go into this kind of expression they have? The next step is that once you have conquered that, which can be really difficult, but once you have conquered that, you're going into the visual reenactment. There you really, really look at when do they take a step forward? When do they turn their body? Why do they raise an eyebrow? Why do they bend their body or something like that? And sometimes, and you try to reenact that. And when I did this, sometimes I really felt like a clown. I thought, what am I doing? This is weird, and it doesn't fit my body, and it's really and I really didn't understand it. And this is really a very, very simple example. I did a pilot project on Isa e Ballade, and there was Hilary Hahn, and she is playing the first phrase super calmly and does almost nothing with her body, but there's this one point where she is sort of, I don't know what's the English name, bends her upper body a little bit. And when I did this, I thought, I don't know what's happening. And only when I thought, okay, when I'm in the gym working out, sometimes your trainer says, okay, imagine that you would press against an invisible wall. You have this, you're going against that. So there is a resistance. And once I realized that, and once I could feel, then I realized, okay, it's like she's going against a resistance, and this is expressed in the change of timbre, and this is expressed in the tension of the whole phrase. So, and once I did this, and once I interpreted her movement like that, it made total sense, and I could follow her musical expression. I can't guarantee you that all my interpretations of their movements are exactly what they think or what they feel, but it helps me to understand the reason for a body movement, and it helps me also to understand these subtleties for an audience. I mean, you don't consciously look on, okay, she raised her eyebrow, but we read this while we are listening to the music, and it's just this tiny thing, and it's combined with a change of color, and it's a meta message to you, which makes it, which points to changes in the musical expression. So I find this super fascinating, and I also realized that while I learned to do this, which is not always easy, I expanded my vocabulary of bodily expression in a way. There are things which I still can't do. For example, I'm this type of violin player. I play a little bit like this, intensity. And for me, I know years and years and years of teachers telling me, take your violin up, present to the audience, and project, and so on. But I'm this type of guy, I'm going into that. This is my way of intensity, this is my expression. But I might be missing out something. I mean, there's probably a reason why so many teachers told me, play like this, you know. So what I'm doing now, at the moment I'm reenacting Maria Duenas, a Spanish wonderful violin player, young generation, and she's really playing like that, and she's plucking music from the sky. Sometimes you have the feeling, you know. And I'm thinking, how can I do this? I have to do something for my muscles in the back, actually. But it's not only the muscles in the back, it's also this kind of being so confident. But it's also, it's not only about confidence, it's not only about the muscles, it's also about where do I take the music from? And how do I project that then into the hall? So I very much hope that after these 3 years, I mean, you know, a body is a body, and we are so long already in our routines, it's not so easy to change your own body. But I hope after these 3 years, when I've done that, and I realize that most of the soloists are really playing like that maybe this is part of my repertoire. I don't have to do it, but I am able to do it. So this is something which is then a very personal effect, of course, of this kind of research. But I am interested if this is available for other performers too, if they apply this message. For example, I was working in 2 different workshops. We had a workshop with master students from the Anton Bruckner Private University, and I had a workshop with, and they were from Upper Strings. And then I had a workshop with at ISA International Summer Academy from the MDV, from the Music Academy and Music University in Vienna, where I had bassoon players, horn, piano, all kinds of instruments, and they tried, at least to a certain extent, this reenacting method, and we were thinking, how can they step out of their inscribed personality just through reenacting, not psychology or anything like that, but it's really this basic thing of reenacting, and we've had some surprising results. So this is something which I really would like to explore, if this method is a method which other performers could use for self-teaching later, for example, when they are not with their teachers anymore, or just when they want to have a different perspective. So enough of that. After the visual reenactment, or while you're doing this auditory reenactment, visual reenactment, of course you have to reflect, and this is something which is for us performers who would like to be in the flow of practicing and don't want to interrupt and don't want to take notes, and so this is sometimes a little bit tedious, but it's part of the project. And surprising, when I really take notes, when I say, okay, here is my problem, here's my challenge, here's what I observed, then it goes so much deeper, and some of the problems I have, or some of the challenges I have, are more quickly solved, just because they are so consciously in my mind. So I think that and in the end, this is the very last step. Once you've gone through that, you do a new documentation of your personal interpretation, and then you compare how was it at the beginning and where am I now. But you never do a documentation of the visual reenactment. That's just your personal thing, which you're doing at home. Okay. Sorry, that was the wrong one, I think. Come on. Okay. Just to show you how much time this might take, this is just one phrase. And I tried to understand the tempo changes from Maxim Vengerov and Hilary Hahn. Maxim Vengerov is in pink, Hilary Hahn is in sort of bluish. And then I add my own interpretation on top of that. So I tried to say, okay, what is happening, how the body swings at the beginning of the quavers, and that marks the start of an agogic accelerando, or with Maxim Vengerov here at the end, head tilted from here, eyes closed, brow forward, eyebrows raised, and I try to think about what does that mean in musical expression. So he is more intense in his playing, but then he turns inwardly, so we can read what is happening in him as a audience member. So let me see, what's the time? So it's slow work, but it's okay, I'm saying this is again a message to the artists out there, to the musicians out there. We are used to slow work. Remember, you're practicing. You have practiced from the age of, 6, 7, 8 maybe. You have practiced for hours and hours. And of course, research is also slow work. You have to build, and you have to collect data, and you have to bring your thoughts together. But it's doable, and it will propel you forward in a completely different way from what you are used to. Okay, one thing maybe which I would add here is Maxim Vengerov's interpretation of the ballad is one of the shortest which you will find on the internet. He is really, really, really fast. And so when I reenact Maxim Vengerov, I come at the limits of what I can do. And but I try to tell that a little bit later. What I realized is that approaching this kind of virtuosity that requires physical skills, but also intellectual skills, but it also requires mental courage, where I sort of stopped before and thought, okay, it's good enough if I'm playing this phrase with warmth and depth and so on and so on. Now I'm really working as a researcher. I'm really thinking, okay, it's not good enough because I have to reenact him. What can I do to go this bit faster? To not stop in the middle of the phrase, but really understand where are the problems, where are the difficulties. And I sometimes realize it's really, what is really needed is mental courage. I just go for it. And this is something which I never did, but now as a researcher, I sort of detach myself from this emotional process of this is my own interpretation. I just say, okay, he's so fast, what can I do to be at least in the range somewhere, and I'm looking really for different ways and tools to do this. It's not about me, it's just about the research, which helps not to be so emotionally involved and not to stop and not to say, but I'm this kind of really super, warm or emotional player. I don't need this speed. Okay. So, to summarize, reenacting embodiment is a practice-based method that allows us to examine gesture and embodiment from an intrinsic perspective and a bottom-up approach through our own doing. To evidence our investigation, we employ the knowledge mode of know-how, that according to performer and artistic researcher Sarah Hubrich comprises tacit and embodied knowledge exclusively known and gained from the perspective of a practitioner, and which can be identified as experiential, haptic, performative instances of knowing, and may be articulated in specific skills and techniques. So this is a little bit of academic talk, but what is here really important is that I'm approaching the questions about the body, gesture, facial expressions from an inside perspective, because there has been done a lot of research with sensors and people trying to understand what is he, she doing and why is it, and then you get 5 reasons. But I had the feeling that they miss so much which they can't know because it's going on in here. And how can we, as a performer, this is our chance to find a voice to articulate what we know. I have to speed up, I think, a little bit. So this inside perspective is what is really difficult, because you have what is implicit, what we know, what is hidden in us, this kind of knowledge. You have to make that explicit. You have to make for other people, you have to make it traceable how the body conveys meaning so they can understand that later, because this is research. They want to understand that. And in artistic research, we can do this through the normal academic text, but we can also create artworks to express something and to emphasize something. And we have to find out what kind of gender inscriptions and conditionings are in our doing. This is complicated, I tell you, and learn about the underlying value systems from our audiences, but also our own. And as I said, we have to find an articulation of our findings through art and through words. And when we know all these things, then we can go one step further and can say, how can I break boundaries? How can I break the boundaries of the conventions in our concert practice? How can I break my own boundaries, as I told you about my playing bodily skills and virtuosic skills and so on and so on. So I don't even know yet what kind of boundaries we might be able to break. This can be just a tiny step, or maybe a bigger step. We'll see after 3.5 years. I would like to give you now an example of how I've isolated gestures and highlighted their expressive power as an attempt to articulate the expressiveness of the body through the art. And this is Maxim Vengerov again. I used a video of Maxim Vengerov where he played the Sibelius violin concerto, and I realized when I was listening to him that his face and body movements really contribute to his musical expression. And my problem was only that gestures and music were so closely fused that you were listening to the music and it's really difficult then also to see the gestures separately in a way, because it belongs together. So, but I wanted to express the body's expressiveness, or emphasize that, so that others could see that also and perceive it as something. So what I did is I just took a really tiny little bit of the music of the Sibelius concerto and pitched it down a fifth. So it's still Sibelius, but it sounds somehow, it doesn't really sound like the typical violin sound. It's just a little bit different. And then I broke this up into pieces and made a new music from that, a remix, really a Sibelius remix. So you have the feeling, I know all these phrases, but it's not quite Sibelius. We get out of our convention of listening to Sibelius violin concerto. And then I was analyzing his gestures and movements, and I was trying to find some which are really very, very typical for him, and to zoom in. And I only took fragments of this video. Sometimes I slowed it down, or many of the fragments are really slowed down. So the music and the gestures are never quite aligned, but they are almost aligned. So you have the feeling it could fit, but it doesn't quite fit. And the passages, his gestures, are not on the original passages, but somewhere else. I wanted the music to emphasize his gestures. So a lot of thought in that, and of course, if you listen to this 1.5 minutes of music, then you might not get all of it as a on-watcher or onlooker. But let's have a look. Okay. More of that in this installation. Okay. Gender, enough of expression. I'll just make it brief into gender, because gender is highly complex, and so the issue of sex differences tends to engender vigilance and caution even beyond the normal high academic customs. So I have the feeling I'm really on a shaky floor here. We have just started with the gender topics. In the first pilot project year, I already tried to find ways of just bringing my body into a new gender feeling. So I was really experimenting. I didn't have a systematic approach yet. What can I show you? So one of the first experiments I did was I had my video of playing Isai sonata, and I was thinking, okay, if I assign some kind of vocabulary to this, powerful, intellectual, and I was searching the internet for inputs like what characterizes a real man, what characterizes a real moment. This was really playful at the beginning, and it's not, and don't take it too seriously. So I was really looking in all these kinds of different words and terms which I found, and then I tried to say, okay, maybe what happens if I just put this vocabulary on top of my video of the Isai? How do people react to that? Is there something they can relate? Is there something where they can say, okay, I can make the connection between this? So I'm just showing you this. Oh yeah, maybe this is also important. I did this in the gist of Cordelia Miller's claim, who said that discourses are not images of reality, but they produce it in a social and cultural construction process. Discourses thus have the function and ability to create and convey truth and realities, and to such an extent that they are ultimately accepted as given and generally valued by those living in and with them. So the more stories we are telling, or the more we are allocating terms to a certain kind of gender, and from gender I mean really the whole bandwidth of gender. I don't just mean male and female, but really there is a lot in between. So I thought maybe if I just put words there and terms there, what I can see, will people understand this as a more sort of cliche male or more female, or can I construct something new? This is, please don't take this too seriously, but this is just the beginning. So I'm just telling you, when I did this video and I signed these words, and then I realized afterwards I was completely confused because not even in me, I'm not working like that. I'm not working in these cliches. I'm a female player, I should do this, or I'm a female person, I'm working like that. I think none of you is. So we are really we have all these different kinds of features and characteristics in us. And we realized that we have to of course, we are in academia and research, we have to have a system for exploring this. Yes. And you can talk to me about that later, because we're running out of time. I really want you to also have the chance to ask questions. Okay, this is the last thing I'll talk to you about today, charisma, because this is also important to us. You see 3 very different players. We consider charisma a social process. And we are following here theories from sociology that are put forward by people like Marlene Fjoll, Harry Strew, and Robert House when they talk about charismatic leadership strategies for affecting social change. That might also be interesting for the students here. I'm not only looking into theories from musicology, I'm really looking into completely different kind of theories. So this is charismatic leadership strategies for affecting social change is really from sociology. It's not about the situation on stage. And also another author which was interesting for us was Jürgen Raab. He wrote about presence and presentation. So, as I said in the beginning, the audience perceives and interprets performers through their bodies and gestures, through the actual staging of the performance, and also through the sound, the acoustic musical expression. But we, vice versa, as performers, create stage personae, while we apply gestures and postures when we perform for an audience. And through their corporality, through their body, performers allow the audience to gain insight into the individual, but also consciously staged and culture-shaped personalities. And bodily and artistic expression are intertwined with how artists, as senders of an artistic, as much as a social message, are perceived by their recipients, our audience. And that happens within a shared value system, and that means within a jointly constructed concept of charisma. Thank you very much. Oops.
Thank you, Barbara, for your inspiring presentation. I have a question. How do you choose a model you're going to imitate? You choose Evangero here. So what is the criteria for choosing a model?
Within this project, we will have 3 rounds, at least 3 rounds of reenacting. And I would like to choose violinists from different generations, okay. But this is only me. Our junior researcher could be from a really different instrument. But I want to have different generations because different generations also come with different fashions of moving. And so I really want to have somebody from the young generation, from the middle generation, from maybe performers who don't live anymore. And to see also how the body language changed over time. And I always want to pair male and female performer from one generation. So I wouldn't go to Henrik Schering and then Hilary Hahn. That wouldn't make sense to me.
Sure. So you're going to be in all the 3 of you are going to be like action researchers, and you are going to reflect on what's happening in you when you're imitating these chosen models. Am I correct?
Only the two of us, the junior researcher and me, because the sociologist, I won't force them on an instrument,
musician.
poor guy.
I thought maybe he's also a musician. Yeah.
No, he is not. No,
Yeah.
and this is really interesting for us because he has done sociology connected with music. He was in noise music, that was his doctoral thesis, and then he was working in participatory art, that was with me, and then he was working about the use of popular music in right-wing politics. That was for the last 3 years or 4 years even, and now he's into classical music and he has no idea about this genre and also about how people gather in classical music, which is good for me because I really have to introduce him to classical music, and I'm reflecting so much on why are we doing this, and about the beauty, but sometimes also the weirdness of our culture, you know. And he's asking these really sometimes naive questions, but for example, he asked questions when you had this workshop with a master students in Linz. Then they said, okay, the teachers told them play from the middle of your body, or take the power from the middle, and then he asked me, but what does that even mean? Yeah. You know? And then I have to translate that for him, and I have to find a way to make it plausible for him. What is it, what we feel in the body? So in a way, that's a chance for us.
Can I have a final question? Okay. I was really wondering how you're going to address non-binary categories, because now this is an open place in science, and for me as a psychologist, it's very difficult to address all the groups of gender that are present now.
Yes. We have our scene, which we're investigating. So in the Western classical instrumental practice, you don't have that much. You still have quite you have male and female players. You don't have that so much, at least not articulated, or I don't know yet about it. About I'm a queer player or a transgender or I don't know. It's not so unspoken yet. So the first thing we have to do is to learn: is there any difference in how the body of soloists who would consider themselves she? Okay. Or he, you know, if you are using the pronouns, can we even tell a difference? And if we can tell a difference, for example, this virtuosity thing was really interesting because I realized that I stopped at a certain point of developing my virtuosity even more. And I was reading then a book about female soloists in the 19th century, and that critics assigned them a kind of false virtuosity, whereas the male players had a true virtuosity, which was connected to that male players were also composers, whereas female players didn't have the chance to learn how to become a composer. So for them, this true virtuosity was sort of, they are even more complex than female players. But I think, does that still have a relevance for me as a player two centuries later, that I still think somehow being super virtuous for virtuosity's sake is a male thing? And I don't want to have this kind of, I don't know, so that virtuosity for me has this kind of association of not really the essential thing, but maybe this is only me still reacting on something that happened in a discourse 2 centuries ago. So, and I think we have to look at these kind of discourses. We are using this, what's it called? Discourse analysis, I think. But we are also, so we are looking what is written. For example, in my installation, you will see these short videos from different players, but then in the middle there is a video where I add comments from YouTube, from people who commented on their body or the way how they see, how they receive these players. And this is, this is huge for us because this is a real source where we can see how people react, how they perceive, because I can't go to each of you and ask you how did you feel, what did you think. But we have a lot of material out there on the internet, or we have a lot of material from reviews and so on, and we have to go into that, and we have to see how is a performer. For example, there is one performer, she is from Erika Morini. She was as good as Heifetz. I have never heard about that. This is a male-female gender issue, you know. And I have never heard about her. And now I found this one video of her from a live situation. And she's displayed on a podium, which is like a circle around it, almost like a doll. You could expect that she's sort of turned around and you can look at her. And I didn't find anything from that time where a male player was displaced like that, really like a doll. And the comments, or on YouTube we find, for example, she was such a fine player. Nobody knows about her. And then I found a video where you could see she played, I don't know, some violin concerto. Who was the conductor? The conductor, and it was only audio, but in video you can put these pictures there so that there's all the time a picture. So the conductor was he was listening. Here you could see his hand like this, listening and pointing towards the orchestra, like that. So a position of authority. And she was depicted with a mirror and a comb. Please? And this is really, I mean, this doesn't make sense. She's such a good player, and why don't you show her on the violin? No violin near, you know. So these are things we are looking into, and so and then I try to. We once we have understood more the discourse which is around it, I also try to see what I can experience from this inner perspective, from this reenactment. I'm not sure if there is any difference in female-male playing. I'm not sure. But I have to really analyze more videos, and I have to do more of the reenacting. And we have to connect it to the past, maybe, or to the way how people are shown, displayed in a setting. And then we want to start a different narration through our artwork. So these are the steps we are taking. Does that answer the question?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your wonderful talk. I wanted to ask you something about your approach for actually investing in embodiment. So what would you say, what is your... So I'm also coming from psychology primarily, so we have this distinction between, habitual conjunctive knowledge, which is actually embodiment on the one hand, and on the other, that reflective theory about something. So when you're kind of imitating or reenacting, as you say, those performers, so what is your approach and what is your methodology that you're actually guaranteeing that you're not producing new just theories about, so that you're not just another performer which creates theories about something, but what is your methodology that actually makes it possible to actually reconstruct those like embodied, you know what I mean? Those embodied.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
This is a really interesting question, because this goes into different disciplines of academic research, and we in artistic research, as don't hit me, I think in sociology or many in the humanities, we don't do these experiments. We have case studies. We try to understand. We try in a constructive, let's say, coming from a different kind of worldview. We try to understand what and to make it in an intersubjective way plausible for others. What we think we understand from segment of a society, for example, that we investigate, or in my case, from these different soloists. But I'm not, certainly I don't have Maxim Vengerov in my studio, and I'm not attaching it to any I can't measure his brain waves and so on and so on. So, and I'm not claiming that I exactly know what is going on in him. I'm just claiming that I try to understand what it is, how a body can contribute to expression, and I will find different examples for that, and I will find examples which I think cannot be measured from the outside, because from the outside I just think I get so like they are moving to signal the beginning. They are moving to, I don't know, I had 4 different kinds of explanations for movements for musicians. And I think it's so much richer and so much, has so much more details. So I will, in artistic research, we can never claim we have the one and only truth about something. So if somebody raises an eyebrow, then that's going to happen. But what I can say, what I can make plausible is that raising an eyebrow is a sign of some kind of change or some kind of emphasis, or it could be a subtle color change, and people will probably do it differently. Vengerov does it this way, and Hilary Hahn does it. There's just a trace of that in her movements. But what I can see, I can read from Hilary Hahn, for example, the way how she plays the first phrase, she's raising it almost over 3 lines in the music, and I can see that in the way how she stands all the time. And I wouldn't have seen it unless I hadn't embodied it myself. So this is a kind of very deep-going observation. Whereas with Maxim Vengerov, for example, I had the feeling he's constantly telling us a story with each sub-phrase, you know. He's playing 3-4 notes, and then he changes something, and you can read it from his body. But I was really becoming aware of that because I was doing that. And then, and this might calm some of the other research disciplines a little bit down, is then I was on his just newly constructed website, and there he has I think an ongoing tutorial for how to play the violin. The first tutorial was about storytelling. So I think this is a sign that I'm not completely wrong. But for me, of course, it is important then, and also for the sociologists we have there, to make all these connections, so that somebody who is who thinks, okay, is that just a subjective thing, can follow our train of thoughts. Just from the beginning where we started. And the method, it's a combination of discourse analysis and this reenacting method and participant observation and analysis of videos. So this is why I say it's important to have this interdisciplinary approach. And it won't be enough if I would just say I'm just using this reenacting embodiment method. That's shaky ground. All kinds of difficult questions here, but they are really at the core of artistic research. We have to make sure that we are not just randomly inventing something. For example, I think, and this is my last word, I think in artistic research, having a hypothesis at the beginning of your research, that's not a good idea. That's really not a good idea, because then everything you will do is sort of trying to find proof of this hypothesis. Be open. For example, for us, grounded theory is a really good method where we just collect texts and interviews and our own observations, and then we go through that. We try to be as open as possible to see what kind of theory emerges from that, or what kind of findings emerge from that. But and this is something which our young doctoral researchers really like. They would really like to have an hypothesis, and I say, you can't do this as an artistic researcher, because every artwork you will create will be you will manipulate that so that in the end you can say, I was right from the beginning. And we don't want that. We want to have this doubt, and we want to have this openness. And this is also something which doesn't really fit to art making. In artistic research, something can prove to be wrong. And we can't have that as artists with our branding, because on stage we have to be right. Because otherwise it's just what we have to do. We have to play really perfectly as possible. We have to stand behind our composition. And but in artistic research, it can happen, as in every other kind of research, that the path you were following was not the right path, and then you have to live with that, and that's perfectly fine in research. But it can be really tricky when you're also still an artist in your profession.